Welcome to SVGTV News for Monday, May 10th, 2021. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. The opposition New Democratic Party has called for a full investigation into the alleged involvement of Senator and Deputy Speaker Ashel Morgan, Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions Kareem Nelson, and another male person in a shooting incident in which Cornelius John, a resident of Diamond, was shot in his foot. In a statement issued on Saturday, the NDP asked that the Commissioner of Police and Director of Public Prosecutions conduct an impartial, transparent investigation and to bring charges against the alleged perpetrators. In the meantime, the NDP said the Senator and Deputy Speaker should step down or be suspended pending the outcome of the investigations. Further, the party also called for the Diamond resident, Mr. John, to be investigated and charged as warranted if, as alleged, he committed any offense. The NDP noted that the issue is a serious one and must not be made a political issue, and that the alleged assailants must be brought to justice, noting that it cannot be the proper functioning of the criminal justice system, especially the police, that 3 weeks after the shooting, no one has been detained or has been charged in the matter. The NDP also condemned comments made by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on NBC Radio on May 4th, stating that he was inappropriate and ill-advised. Meanwhile, on the radio this morning, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said in his earlier comments on the matter, he did not issue a defense for anyone and was clearly misunderstood.
And I said that, politics is a hell of a thing. If the shoe on the other foot, you'd have a different spin. That what they would have said is that there's violence against women, and that it's good that somebody defending women against violence. I didn't say that that is what was my view. I said that is what they would have said, because I know how some of the propagandists operate. But what I just said there, that they would have said, turn around now to say, is I say as that as a defense of Ashel when I'd never said anything of the kind. I didn't issue any defense of anybody.
The Prime Minister noted that judgment should not be passed on people before they are found guilty, and the public should wait for the investigations to conclude.
In the minds of some people, if an allegation is made against somebody from a political side, people go on and jump to the conclusion without anything else and say they are guilty. They must stop it. I don't want them to do it. I don't want our people to do it if there's an allegation against somebody with the on the NDP side. But I know what was already happening in relation to Ashel Morgan. They were bringing her guilty, which is really unfair, and they mustn't do it. The Constitution protects the right, the presumption of innocence for everybody, The Constitution says everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The second thing, you have to have a process, a fair investigative process. And there are rules and laws governing those things. And you must have a fair trial within a reasonable time.
Former Member of Parliament, Deputy Prime Minister and Attorney General of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Panel Campbell QC, who passed away on Monday, April 19, 2021, will be accorded a state funeral. The funeral will take place on Thursday, May 13th at the Kingston Methodist Church. Official viewing of the body will be held at the House of Assembly from 10:30 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Officials will be invited to the viewing from 10:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the general public from 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Viewing and tributes will be from 1 p.m. followed by the service at 2:30 p.m. Interment will be at the Kingston Cemetery. A news release from the Office of the Prime Minister said his family has requested no taking of photographs or video recording of the body during the viewing period. The release said that as a mark of respect, all flags throughout the state will be flown at half-mast on Thursday. The release further noted that there will be strict adherence to full COVID-19 protocols, sanitization, observance of safe physical distancing, and the wearing of facial coverings will be mandatory. Tomorrow in Parliament, tributes will be made to Campbell QC. However, due to time constraints, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said only 2 persons each from the government and opposition bench would be able to pay tribute.
I have to pay tribute to Parnell, because he is a member of the House, first as a senator and then as an elected member. But again, I want to suggest to the clerk, I haven't spoken to the clerk on this, to have just 2 persons from the opposition and 2 persons from the government talk. PR, if everybody who in the House, PR get up and talk, we ain't gonna get anything done. And PR would want, while we pay respect to him, he would have wanted us to do the work of the living. Why we pay respects to our dearly departed brother.
Lead scientist monitoring Lassofre volcano gas specialist Dr. Thomas Christopher today said no seismic activity has been recorded from the volcano. During the daily update on the radio today, Dr. Christopher said that no news means good news.
With regards to activity, as I said, the volcano is quiet, which is a good thing.
I've been quiet.
Remember, there's been a few minor earthquakes, but nothing of substance.
Okay.
To raise the alarm about. But I remember before the explosion started, when we didn't have much to say, there was some complaint about, we're saying nothing. But I think people need to understand that when it comes to us, no news is actually good news.
Yes.
Because it means there's nothing happening.
The last explosion recorded from the volcano was on April 22nd. Last Thursday, the volcano alert level was lowered from red to orange. Residents from the orange zone communities were told they can return to their home to continue living, except for Chateaubelair and Fitzhughes. Occupancy in the red zone is, however, strictly prohibited. Meanwhile, Dr. Christopher said the projected rainfall for the weekend did not happen as was expected. Hence, there was no lahars or mud flows. The manager of the SVG Met Office, Billy Jeffer, said over the last 24 hours, just over half inch of rainfall was recorded.
Around half inch of rainfall? Yeah, that is in a 24-hour period. This station I'm referring to, there's one in the interior Majorca station, and there's one Jennings. This is closer to Georgetown.
As of the moment, there's no threat of any flood for Kingston unless you get something like 2 inches.
Yeah. Basically, we tend to use just around 50 millimeters as our threshold.
Yes.
But obviously, if the drainage system is not adequately clean,
very good point.
Obviously, it's going to be a lower threshold.
Absolutely.
Jeffers noted that while Kingston was not flooded, other areas prone to flooding on the windward and leeward side of the island may experience lahars or mud flows, even with a half inch of rainfall.
This morning, we're having some low-level clouds moving along, so. But obviously what we will be getting is lahars and so on as a result. So I was just listening to the conversation, moving in the red zone. Obviously, it's going to be a bit dangerous.
And some COVID-related news now. We hear that 8 new positive cases were reported from 187 samples processed on Friday, May 7th, resulting in a positivity rate of 4.3%. The National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, said 3 of the 8 new cases were identified in emergency shelters. Other cases are contacts of positives across various communities. 2 new COVID-19 positive cases were reported from 67 samples processed on Saturday, May 8th, resulting in a positivity rate of 2.6%. No new positive cases were reported from 58 samples processed on Sunday, May 9th, and no new recoveries were noted over the reporting period. 169 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 1,922 cases of COVID-19 and 1,741 recoveries have been reported in St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The public is urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance, and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 here in SVG. Amidst the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the dengue outbreak, the recent explosive eruption of La Soufrière, and the subsequent floods and looming uncertainty, Vincentians at large have experienced their fair share of challenges which have affected the mental health of a number of people in the country. Speaking on SVG-TV's Viewpoint program, Councillor assigned to the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center, Odelia Thomas, said many persons, especially those who have been displaced, have developed anxiety, depression, loss of appetite, and anger problems.
For adults, what we have been seeing is that persons, because of the fear of what has happened, the fear of what could happen, because we really don't know, have the eruption stopped, is it going to start again? If you lost your home and you lost your farm, how am I going to start over? So because of the fear, some people are experiencing anxiety. So they're worried about what is to come. How is this going to affect me? Having problems sleeping. Some persons have been having nightmares. And I remember one lady told me every time she hears a loud noise, she gets scared because she thinks it's Soufrière erupting again because she lived in the red zone.
Thomas noted that this month is observed as Mental Health Awareness Month, where the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center will join other countries around the world in bringing awareness to mental health, fight stigma, and advocate for persons living with mental illnesses and their family. The activities for Mental Health Awareness Month are being observed under the theme, "You Are Not Alone." Councillor Thomas said that the theme reminds of how important community is to a person's mental health, especially in a time of crisis.
We want people to realize that they are not alone. As I was growing up, the community was my village. And I think this has shown us how important community is to our mental health. Imagine in the middle of eruption if you were by yourself, if you didn't have your other villagers coming to get you, or in the shelter you're not banding together to take care of yourselves. We are stronger together and we get more things done together. And when we are struggling and when we are having difficulties, it is important to reach out to your connections. So your friends, your family, a professional. We are not islands. We need each other. That's how we were created as social beings. And so when you are struggling and when it's difficult for you, reach out to somebody.
Thomas further explained how a child's mental health can be affected by a crisis, including the COVID-19 pandemic and the volcano eruption. She said that teenagers and younger children below 10 are affected differently.
Clinging more to their parents because they are afraid they might lose them or something bad will happen to them, so they don't want their parents out of their eyesight. They might be more irritable, they might be crying more. You might have children who are throwing tantrums, and let's say you had a child who never did this before, and all of a sudden they're throwing tantrums, They stamping their feet, they want to roll around on the ground and want to give you an attitude and I'm your mother, who you talking to? And then we have those children who show regressive behavior. So let's say your child has already been potty trained. Your child might now have difficulty in going to the bathroom. So they might wet themselves, soil themselves, start sucking their fingers, things that they haven't done for quite a while. And you might be wondering why.
Council and local chair for the Caribbean Male Action Network, Carriman Kesley Cambridge, who is also a panelist on the Viewpoint program, spoke on ways parents can help children cope with the challenges facing the country.
Thinking that, children have had it hard.
Yes.
They have had it hard this season, and it makes our jobs now even more difficult because we have to really think right back to when it was COVID, dengue, volcanic eruption, and trying to get them to understand. So as you rightly said, yes, children would get night sweats, the behavior would change, it would be sporadic, and it is for parents not to get upset, but just try to understand and have some patience and talk, communicate, because a lot of times you find instances where a parent will get upset. So my child never did this before, why all of a sudden she's doing this? And you start to beat. You get upset because you do something bad, you get licks. But if you take the time to really stop and wonder, okay, what is causing this? Then you will be able to address that situation and find some resolve or get some sort of specialized help.
Health psychologist and CEO of the Value Experience, Dr. Joselle Miller, says that mental health is a shared issue as persons must look out for those around them as they do for themselves. She said persons from the orange and red zones may be under increased pressure due to loss of livelihoods, livestock, destruction of two homes, and being temporarily displaced for the unforeseen future. In addition to this, persons in the yellow and green zones would have experienced disruption to their lives at some point. It is for these reasons, Dr. Miller notes, that finding and removing stressors from the environment is important to preserve mental health. She said if watching news reports, for example, heightens the feeling of anxiety in an individual, they should refrain from doing so, as when mental health is compromised, a person's functionality reduces, creating problems for themselves and those around them.
We think in terms of a first response. You have to think in terms of psychological first aid. And the initial thing is to observe what exists, what is presented in terms of the signs that are presented by various persons. And in doing that, when we observe the signs, then we can respond based on what we are seeing. So mental health is very important, and going about taking the necessary steps to safeguard your mental wellness is extremely critical at this time, because it helps us with the way we cope with life. It can help with our physical health, because our mental and physical health are very much connected. You have good relationships. It contributes to you being productive and helps you to live up to your fullest potential.
There are signs that can be observed as a person's mental health begins to deteriorate. Dr. Miller shared what individuals can be mindful of.
Change in your eating habits or sleeping patterns. If you are withdrawing from people and activities, so that there isn't a point now where you feel like you want to interact with your family or friends, you have just simply withdrawn into a shell by yourself. You have low energy, you feel fatigued and tired all the time, feeling a bit numb, like nothing matters, like there's this big ambivalence, having unexplained aches and pains, constant headache, feeling helpless or hopeless, coping mechanisms such as smoking, using drugs, promiscuous sex. Your mood has changed, you're becoming very forgetful. If there's any signs or symptoms of psychosis where you're hearing voices, you're seeing things that no one else can see, or you're feeling things on your skin, it's unexplained. These are things that would be very alarming, and it would be best that you get in touch with a mental health practitioner.
And as the situation grows increasingly difficult, there are techniques that can be used to maintain mental health, including breathing exercises, guided imagery, tapping into senses, and reinforcement of positive thoughts through self-awareness.
exercises. So you take some very deep breaths and you hold it in through your nose, out through your mouth. You hold it for a moment and then you release. And whilst you're doing the deep breathing, there's also something called guided imagery, that you simply take your mind to a place where you are very happy and at peace. It's also important to tap into your senses. You want to pay attention to what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you taste, what you're feeling. Zone in on all of your sensory information and just simply remind yourself in that moment that you're fine, that you're okay. So you have to constantly be mentally reframing. A lot of mindfulness is very important now, and being self-aware that if your mind is drifting off into places that is making you anxious and feeling overwhelmed, you have to keep stopping that thought process and reframing it into something more positive.
Dr. Miller also noted that a mental health diagnosis can be given to anyone. Therefore, it is important to respect mental health the way you would any ailment.
One can be diagnosed easily with a mental disorder. It is important for us to know that stressors, different things in life, we can go along a spectrum. And whilst we are adjusting on a daily basis, if something happens that it is overwhelming to the extent that we feel the resources we have cannot allow us to function, it can lead to things like anxiety, developing depression and stuff like that. So we can't take it for granted at all that our mental wellness is important to be preserved.
The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College today resumed all classes and has physically reopened its offices. The college says the resumption saw the return of face-to-face classes for many students since its last switch to a fully virtual format in December 2020. All administrative offices that went virtual as a result of last affair's explosive eruption have also resumed physical operations. The college is reminding the public that the wearing of masks is mandatory on all its compounds. The college also encourages anyone visiting its campuses to undergo a temperature check at entrances, sanitize, and social distance.